After I gave birth, my husband's sister took my baby from my arms and said, "You're just the incubator, I'll raise him right." My husband stood silent as she locked me out of the nursery. That night, I whispered through the door, "You have no idea what I just did to your custody rights. I'm 32, living in Lexington, Kentucky. I worked as a dental hygienist before all this, before my world cracked open. I married David almost 4 years ago. I thought I married a gentleman. He never yelled. Never hit. But he was a coward in disguise. That type of man who will let you drown while pretending to hold out a rope. David has a sister named Brenna. And Brenna, well, she's the kind of person who doesn't knock on doors, on boundaries, on anything. When I first met her, I thought she was just overprotective. She's single, no kids, never moved out of town. She calls David my person, like it's a cute Grey's Anatomy reference. But it's not cute. It's obsessive. She was always around. And I mean always. If we went on a date, she'd call 10 times. If we made dinner, she'd show up just to grab something, then stay for hours. David never told her no. Not once. It got worse when we got married. On our honeymoon, Brenna called every morning just to check in. She came to our house almost daily. She'd reorganize things I set up. Bought nursery furniture before I even told anyone I was pregnant. She'd call our home our house. I told David it made me uncomfortable. He said I was being dramatic. So when I got pregnant, I felt like I was walking a minefield. We'd been trying for a year. When the test came back positive, I cried. Happy tears. But when I told David, he didn't cry. He went silent. Then he said, "I should talk to Brenna about this." I just stared at him. I said, "Why? She's not part of this marriage." He shook his head. "She's part of me." That line stuck with me like a bone in my throat. The next day, he came back smiling. "We can do this," he said. I asked what he and Brenna talked about. He just said, "She's on board." On board. Like it was some business deal. Pregnancy was hard. I had gestational diabetes and was on partial bed rest for the last month. My feet swelled so badly I couldn't wear shoes. And during all that, David became more distant. He moved into the guest room so I could sleep better. Brenna started spending the night on our couch. She'd walk into the bathroom while I was in there. She once said, "You're just the vessel. I'll take care of him once he's out." I laughed it off then. Like she was joking. She wasn't. 3 weeks before my due date, I found an email thread on David's laptop. I wasn't snooping. He left it open. It was between him and Brenna. Dozens of messages. Long threads. She wrote things like, "She's not emotionally stable. You know that. She won't be a good mom. Once he's here, we need to make sure she doesn't interfere. You and I will raise him right." David never argued. He agreed. Over and over again. I felt like someone had hit me in the chest. I wasn't even mad at first. I was numb. I printed the emails. Took photos. Copied everything. Then I called a lawyer. Her name was Michelle. Tough, sharp, zero fluff. I told her everything. She didn't blink. "You need to prepare," she said. "If they try to isolate you from the baby, you'll have legal protection ready." So I did everything she told me. Got a psychological evaluation. Clean. Collected evidence. Made logs. Got witness statements from coworkers, neighbors, even my sister. Filed for full custody and an emergency protection order against Brenna. The judge signed it. But they hadn't been served yet. Then I went into labor. It was long. 12 hours of hard contractions. 3 hours of pushing. When Jacob came out and they put him on my chest, I sobbed. It was love like I never felt before. He was small and perfect and mine. That was around 3:30 in the afternoon. By 4:10, Brenna stormed into the room. She didn't knock. She walked right in, past the nurse, picked up Jacob without asking. She looked down at him like she'd just claimed a prize. "He's even more beautiful than I imagined," she said. I asked, "Can I hold him?" She said, "You've done your part. I'll take it from here." David stood behind her, silent. I looked at him. "Tell her to give me my baby." He looked away. "We talked about this." I said, "No. We didn't." "You two did." Brenna laughed. "You were always the incubator." "That's it." The nurse tried to intervene, but David said I was just overwhelmed and needed rest. Because I was the wife, and he was listed as the father, they overrode the concern. I wasn't allowed to follow them when they walked off with Jacob. The hospital let them lock the nursery. I sat in the hallway, in my gown, bleeding through a pad, alone, while they cooed over my son through a door. That's when I whispered, "You have no idea what I just did to your custody rights." I called Michelle. She was already waiting. By 7:30 a.m., officers showed up with a social worker and a copy of the custody order and restraining order. We walked together to the nursery. The nurse knocked. David opened the door. He was holding Jacob. Brenna was feeding him a bottle. The officer said, "David, you've been served. You are now under a temporary custody order. Hand the child to his mother." David looked stunned. "No. She's not, this is a mistake." Brenna screamed. "You can't do this. She's unfit." The officer looked her in the eye. "Brenna Harmon, you're in violation of a protective order. You need to leave this hospital right now or you will be arrested." She screamed. She actually tried to grab Jacob before the officer blocked her. I took my baby in my arms again. He was crying. But I held him close, and I told him, "I've got you. I'm never letting you go again." The court process started the next week. David fought hard. Claimed I was mentally unstable. But I had a clean psych evaluation. Logs. Emails. Witnesses. The judge saw through them. Fast. He was stripped of temporary custody. Only allowed supervised visits. But I made it clear, those visits couldn't include Brenna. Ever. He refused. Said it was all or nothing. So he picked nothing. Brenna tried to file for guardianship on her own. The judge denied it immediately. "You're not family," he told her. "You're not even relevant here." She had a meltdown in court. Threw her purse. Called the judge corrupt. Security escorted her out. I moved out of Lexington with Jacob. Went to Cincinnati, near my sister. Got a job at a new clinic. Got Jacob into daycare. Every now and then, I still get blocked calls. I never answer. David never showed up again. Not for Jacob's birthday. Not for anything. But I know this isn't over. Not yet. They're quiet for now. But people like Brenna don't disappear. And people like David? They rot in their own silence. I'm ready. 3 months after I moved to Cincinnati, I started to breathe again. I found a little 2-bedroom apartment near my sister, Lacey. She helped watch Jacob while I worked. I started to feel normal. But trauma doesn't let go that easy. Some nights I'd wake up in a sweat, thinking I heard Brenna at the door. Then it got real. I got an email from my old landlord in Lexington. He said someone claiming to be my sister tried to get into my old apartment. Said she needed some of my belongings that I forgot. I hadn't forgotten anything. I had moved out fully. I asked for the name. It was Brenna. She was snooping. Looking for something. Or maybe just trying to get close to my trail. Then 2 days later, I got a knock at my door in Cincinnati. I looked through the peephole. It was a man in a suit. He handed me an envelope and said, "You've been served." Inside was emotion. David was trying to reopen custody. He wanted full custody now. Not joint. Full. And the twist? He had a new lawyer. A mean one. One who specialized in parental alienation cases. I called Michelle. They're trying to flip the script, she said. They're going to claim you used legal tricks to cut him off and poison Jacob against his father. Jacob was barely 5 months old. He didn't even speak yet. But that wasn't the worst part. Attached to the motion were new evidence files. Photos of me, taken recently. At the park. Outside work. At my apartment building. Someone was watching me. Michelle looked through them and said, "They're building a case that you're unstable. That you're paranoid. They want the court to believe you're making Brenna out to be a monster when she's just concerned. They were trying to make me the villain. I did something I didn't think I'd ever do. I reached out to David's mom. She lived in Tennessee, estranged from both of them. She hadn't talked to David in years. I found her on Facebook. Messaged her, told her what was going on. Asked if she'd talk. She agreed to meet me in person. I drove to Nashville with Jacob. She was polite. Nervous. But when I told her everything, she looked down and whispered, "I'm sorry. I should have warned you." Turns out, Brenna was obsessed with Jacob before he was even born. Obsessed with being a mother, but never trusted to adopt or foster because of a history of unstable behavior. David used to lie for her. She said their bond was sick. That when they were teens, Brenna had a way of convincing David to cover for her no matter what she did. David never protected anyone but Brenna, she said. He wouldn't even protect himself. She wrote me a statement. An affidavit. Sworn and signed. Said Brenna had a pattern of manipulation. That David enabled it. That Jacob wasn't safe around them. Michelle said it was gold. But the court fight wasn't over. David's lawyer started demanding psychological evaluations for me. Drug testing. Wellness checks. I agreed to all of them. I had nothing to hide. But the stress was eating me alive. Then one day, I got home and found a toy on my doorstep. One Jacob didn't own. One I'd seen before. Brenna's favorite stuffed animal as a kid. I remembered it from the photos she kept in David's office. She'd been there. On my porch. The police wouldn't do much. No direct threat, they said. Even with the restraining order, they claimed there was no proof she was the one who left it. Michelle filed an emergency motion for full protection. We added cameras. We kept logs. Every knock, every sound, I was on edge. But I never backed down. Because they weren't just trying to take my baby. They were trying to erase me. I wasn't just fighting for Jacob anymore. I was fighting to exist in his life at all. 3 weeks before the next court hearing, my lawyer got an anonymous envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a USB drive. We plugged it in at her office. It had 3 video files. Grainy, but clear enough. They were security cam clips from a grocery store parking lot in Lexington. The first video showed Brenna standing next to David's car, arguing with him. She was holding a manila envelope and shoving it at him. He was clearly agitated. At one point, he actually pushed her away. Not hard, but enough to make her stumble. The second video showed David, alone in the car later that same day, lighting something on fire and throwing it into a dumpster behind the store. Michelle zoomed in. It looked like legal papers. The third video? It was from the week before. From my apartment building. It showed a hooded figure, tall, male, walking up to my front door around midnight. He placed something on the mat, looked at the door for a few seconds, then left. Michelle froze the frame. That's David, she said. Not Brenna. All this time, I thought she was the one stalking me. But he was behind it too. Maybe more than her. Maybe way more. I felt sick. Michelle got the footage authenticated and added it to our evidence list. It showed David was still in contact with Brenna, even though he told the court they were estranged. More importantly, it showed he was the one showing up at my place, not just her. They were both violating court orders. But it also made one thing clear. David wasn't just spineless anymore. He had crossed the line into active danger. A week later, I got a call from Jacob's daycare. They were panicked. Said a man had shown up trying to pick up Jacob. Said he claimed to be Jacob's legal guardian. But when they asked for ID and checked the custody file I had on record, he got nervous and left. They showed me the security footage. It wasn't David. It was someone else. A man I didn't recognize. Tall, bald, with a fake-looking work badge clipped to his shirt. He tried to take my son. I filed a police report, again. This time, they took it more seriously. The daycare put new security in place. Michelle filed for an emergency restraining clause covering anyone acting on behalf of David or Brenna. I knew it was them. They didn't care about the law. They were testing how far they could push. Testing how much they could scare me. How close they could get to Jacob without breaking a window. And worst of all, I started to realize I wasn't just dealing with two broken people. I was dealing with a full plan. One night, I got a call from a blocked number. I almost didn't answer. But I did. It was David. "I just want to talk," he said. His voice was shaky. Not like him. I stayed silent. Then he said something that shook me. "She's going too far." I didn't agree to this part. "What part?" I asked. My voice was ice. "I told her we could build a case, but she's not stopping." I didn't know she sent someone to the daycare. I realized what was happening. They were falling apart. Brenna was spiraling, and David was losing control over her. Or maybe he never had it. I hit record on my phone, quietly. "Let him keep talking. She keeps saying we have to fix it, that Jacob belongs to us, not to you." I didn't know she meant, he cut himself off. I said, "You need to turn on her. Right now." He hung up. Michelle sent the audio to the court. It wasn't a full confession, but it helped. It showed instability. It showed internal conflict. It showed danger. The judge ordered an emergency in-camera hearing. No jury. Just the judge, the attorneys, and me. And David. Brenna wasn't allowed in. That hearing changed everything. But the war wasn't over. Because what came next wasn't a court filing. It was fire. 2 days before the final custody ruling, I came home from work and found smoke in the hallway. The fire alarms weren't going off. Not yet. But I knew that smell. Burnt plastic. Scorched fabric. I ran down the hall toward my apartment, heart pounding in my throat. The door was closed, but black smoke curled out from under it. I screamed for my neighbor to call 911, then unlocked the door and rushed inside. The living room was filled with smoke. Flames were crawling up the corner of the curtains, toward Jacob's playpen. But he wasn't in it. He was safe, thank God, because my sister had picked him up early from daycare that day. I managed to grab the fire extinguisher and spray enough to control the flames until the fire department arrived. They said another 2 minutes and it would have spread to the entire unit. The cause? Accelerant on the curtains. Someone had poured something along the windows and set it on fire. No sign of forced entry. But there was a clue. In the sink, someone had left a disposable lighter. Inside the battery compartment, stuffed in the plastic, was a scrap of paper. On it, in thick black marker, "You won't win. He's ours. Brenna." The next 24 hours were a blur. I took Jacob and stayed with my sister. The police finally issued a warrant for Brenna's arrest. Michelle called the judge in the custody case and filed an emergency escalation. The next morning, we were in court again. I showed up holding Jacob in my arms, with burn marks still on my shoes and the letter in a plastic evidence bag. David was already there, looking pale. Alone. The judge stared at us for a long time before speaking. "Mr. Avery, are you aware that your sister is now under investigation for attempted arson? That she may have tried to endanger the child you claim to want custody of?" David looked broken. "Yes," he said quietly. And did you know she was still in contact with you while under a court restraining order? He nodded. Yes. And did you participate in or assist with any of these actions? He hesitated. Then said, I didn't stop her. The judge slammed her gavel. That's enough. The ruling came down hard. I was granted permanent full custody. David's parental rights were terminated. Not suspended, terminated. Legally, he was no longer Jacob's father. The judge ruled that his actions, or inactions, constituted child endangerment, conspiracy, and a pattern of emotional abuse. She told him, you allowed your sister to weaponize motherhood. You had a chance to protect your son and you chose silence. David didn't fight it. He didn't even cry. He just sat there. Like a man who finally realized he lost everything. As for Brenna? She was arrested 2 days later hiding in a motel just outside Lexington. Her fingerprints were on the lighter. She had printed custody papers in her bag with fake signatures. Her car was full of baby supplies and a handwritten schedule for raising Jacob. She was charged with attempted arson, criminal trespassing, and violation of a protective order. They also opened a separate case to review past claims from others, claims that were never followed up on before. Brenna won't be getting out for a long time. But it didn't end there. I sued both of them. With Michelle's help, we filed a civil suit for emotional distress, endangerment, stalking, and attempted parental alienation. We froze David's assets and drained his joint accounts. Every dollar he tried to use to fight me, I took back with interest. Brenna lost everything. Her apartment. Her job. She was already halfway blacklisted from the community because of her previous outbursts, but this sealed it. She's now in a women's correctional facility in Frankfurt. No visitors. No phone privileges. David? He moved in with a distant cousin in Indiana. Last I heard, he works nights at a hardware store and hasn't spoken to anyone in the family since. I don't know if he still thinks of Jacob. I don't care. Now, it's been almost 2 years. Jacob is happy. Healthy. He laughs when I dance around the kitchen. He calls me mommy and clings to me like I'm the whole sky. He doesn't remember any of it. Not Brenna's voice. Not David's silence. And he never will. Because I made sure their names were wiped from every document. I changed his last name legally. I got new birth records, sealed custody rulings, the whole thing. To the world, it's like they never existed. But I'll never forget. I don't hate myself for falling for David. I was vulnerable. I wanted a family. But I do hate the years I spent doubting my gut. Pretending his silence was kindness. Pretending Brenna's obsession was just love in disguise. It wasn't. It was control. And I took it back. All of it.